The world of Daystar was turned upside down when Lisa Weiss said strange things about Doug Weiss. That's not what anyone thought would happen. Fans are still in shock over Joni Lamb's silence, which said more than any words could. What lie was so strong that it could shake everything they owned? What lie did Doug try to hide? This is the big secret that could make everything stop. You'll understand why people can't stop talking about it once you hear it. People dreamed of being married to Doug and Lisa Weiss for years. They stood next to each other on church stages and smiled as they talked about love, faith, and family. When people looked at them, they saw a godly man who led with knowledge and a beautiful woman who stood by his side with quiet strength. They built an organization that inspired a lot of people together, everywhere. Doug was the marriage counselor who knew how to keep couples together, and Lisa was the loving wife who lived by everything he said. But there was a story behind that picture that no one saw. When they got home, the cheers and love went away. Lisa wasn't the beautiful woman in the pictures anymore. She was worn out. We are sick of waiting for talks that never took place. Sick of smiling when she didn't feel like she was seen. The things that Doug loved most were cameras, gatherings, and being loved. He talked a lot about closeness but lived far away. Noise and prayer stopped at nights that used to be full of them. Lisa would wait for him to get home from another important meeting while the food at the dinner table got cold. When he finally did, he was already looking ahead to the next show, sermon, or audience. Lisa tried to figure out what was going on. She prayed more because she thought God could fix what was wrong. She told herself that this might only be a short time and that love meant making sacrifices. She didn't expect to feel something, though, deep down. Isolation in a marriage that looked great to everyone else. Doug's charm used to interest her, but now it felt like a wall she couldn't get over. I told her, "No, Joni, something very bad has happened. There was an article and everything." No. Then she stood up for Pete. He hurt Pete so much, thanks a lot. That Pete about whom Rebecca and J.W. wrote a long letter. Becky and J.W. won't let Pete into their house. Pete is a good person. She told Susie that she was a pathological liar and that she had attacked her and made these claims about a nice man, the doctor who has since died but has a record. Which is why I was shocked by what Joni said. I begged her. I told him, "Please make peace with Jonathan for yourself." That was the hope. I saw that part of her. I can only say that it's not at all like the Joni on TV. It's not like that nice person. But I thought I recognized that girl from the video where she said Jonathan has been running a smear campaign, which makes me wonder what you're on about. I hadn't seen Jonathan spreading lies about other people. I knew Jonathan. People saw the smiles, the soft touches on stage, and the posts about how blessed they were by God. The sadness in his eyes and the tears Lisa wiped away after each show were hidden from them. Their marriage had turned into a show that they practiced and improved for the cameras and the crowd. No one knew that the love they longed for was only an illusion, as people hoped to have what they had. Lisa's faith was the only thing that kept her together behind the scenes. Slowly, her heart began to break, but it didn't happen all at once in a fight or a moment of betrayal. The point where Lisa Weiss broke slowly came, like water wearing down stone. She had been the quiet partner in a great marriage for years. Doug was sure of himself, smart, and full of passion when he was on stage. She was sitting next to him, softly smiling, and she looked like a picture of beauty. They looked like they couldn't be moved. Lisa had been quiet for so long, though, that she had almost forgotten what her own voice sounded like. The beat was the same every day. Doug left early because he was in a hurry to meet someone, record something, or talk somewhere. He would kiss her on the face, which was more of a habit than an act of love, and then go back to the world where everyone admired and praised him. Lisa would stay behind and take care of the house, the bills, the kids, and the peace and quiet. In between our gaps, it was never really him who walked through the door when he came back. His mind was still on the stage, even though his body was there. She tried to get in touch with him. Doug would ask about his favorite food, leave a note on his desk, or just say, "Can we talk tonight?" But he always had something more important to do. He kept saying, "You know how busy this week is," but later never came. Lisa became more and more aware that she had lost the focus of her marriage over time. Someone who was there to keep his life going smoothly. His plans didn't work with how she felt. The only way to keep the peace was for her to stay quiet. The hardest times were the ones that everyone saw. Lisa would get a knot in her stomach when Doug talked about love and talking to people. He talked about how to love your partner, how to listen deeply, and how marriage is a holy union. A few people would mumble and nod. "They're such a beautiful example." Lisa would smile and clap along with the crowd, even though it was so hard for her to breathe because she knew those words would never again be spoken in their home. She prayed all the time, but not the small, polite prayers that people say at dinner. Instead, she whispered despair into pillows at 2 a.m. with red eyes and a shaking heart. "Please God," she would whisper. Doug was always too tired, too busy, or too committed to everyone else besides her. Then there was the night that changed everything. Doug was in his office working on a new sermon about emotional intimacy. Lisa stood in the doorway and watched him speak his thoughts out loud while writing notes about understanding your partner's needs. His words were strong and full of conviction, but his eyes were cold and empty. That's when Lisa realized she wasn't living a marriage. She was living a performance. He preached love, but he didn't show it. He told others how to stay connected while ignoring the woman who had shared his bed for 30 years. It wasn't anger that broke her, hit her first. It was grief, the kind that comes when you finally accept that something sacred is gone. She walked back to her room, sat on the edge of the bed, and cried, not loudly, but with quiet tears that came from years of pretending everything was fine. That night, Lisa stopped asking God to change Doug. Instead, she prayed for strength to face the truth. And that was when her silence started to change. For years, her silence had been about survival, keeping up appearances, protecting the ministry, making sure no one saw the cracks. But now, silence became something else. It became a boundary, a space to breathe, a small rebellion against the weight of pretending. Lisa began to journal again, writing down things she had never dared to say out loud. She wrote about her loneliness, her anger, her fading hope. She wrote to remember herself. When she finally spoke out publicly in 2024, it wasn't with rage or revenge. It was calm, measured, and heartbreakingly honest. Her voice shook at first, but then it steadied. She talked about years of invisibility, about what it felt like to live beside someone who said they loved you but didn't show it. "I believed in him," she said softly, "but it made me lose myself." People who had been following Doug for years couldn't believe it. Their marriage had been a cornerstone of faith-based teaching. But as the story spread, people started to see something else. The courage Lisa had to tell the truth. She wasn't putting anyone down. She was just refusing to carry a lie any longer. For Doug, it was a blow to his carefully crafted image. For Lisa, it was the first breath of freedom. The years of quiet tears, praying for change, and smiling through pain had all led to this moment. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel small or guilty. She just felt real. The silence she had once feared had become her power. She no longer needed to be validated. What should have broken her had instead made her stronger. Now her story, raw, painful, and true, was helping other people find their voices too. That was the real breaking point. Not the end of her marriage, but the start of her freedom. The moment she stopped protecting an image and started protecting herself. The woman who used to stand quietly next to her husband now stood alone, and her voice, which had been silenced, became a light for those still living in the dark. It all started with a picture, just one picture, of Doug Weiss and Joni Lamb smiling in front of a cross, their hands intertwined and their eyes shone under the studio lights. God's plan always comes through. Within hours, Christian news outlets reported on it, and a flood of comments followed. Some called it divine timing, a testimony of love renewed, and proof that God gives second chances. But for Lisa Weiss, it wasn't divine. It was devastating. She had barely finished signing the divorce papers. The wounds were still fresh, still bleeding. She was still waking up in the middle of the night, reaching for a man who wasn't there anymore. Then suddenly there he was, not as her husband, not as the man she'd spent over 30 years supporting, but as someone else's blessing. It felt unreal, like watching a movie about her own life, rewritten by someone else. The man she had prayed for, cried for, and stood beside through every season was now posing with another woman, calling it destiny. The worst part wasn't the surprise. It was the familiarity. Lisa knew Joni. She